What's a story your friend told which you initially thought was bullshit, but turned out to be true? My great-granddad was in the British Navy in WW2. A bomb dropped by the Germans landed on their ship but didn't detonate, so my granddad and his friend ran towards it and hurled it off the ship where it exploded underwater. They figured that they were going to die anyway if it exploded, so why not try and save as many as possible in the process. This story went on for years and years and nobody quite believed him. They would all laugh and thought it was just a war hero's exaggerated tale, until one day he pulled out his war medals and a letter from his captain stating what he had done for the men on that ship that day. Nobody second-guessed his stories ever again. I miss him a lot. Edit, he served the HMS Rapid for anyone interested. My friend in HS told me he was banging the new driver's ed teacher. I didn't believe him until she was arrested. 9. A random guy who apparently had a cousin who worked in Hollywood told me he knew a lot of celebrity secrets. I didn't really believe him and asked, like what? And he told me Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes' marriage was a sham, and they had a contract to stay married for 5 years. I thought it was total bullshit and he just wanted attention at the party, but then they divorced after 5.5 years and reached an agreement only a few days after filing. I wondered if there was something to what he said. In 9th grade, during the middle of our teenage angst, a friend in our clique was bragging about banging this pretty hot chick. No one believed him until we all found out she had gotten pregnant. My best friend in college was a non-traditional, way older, student who said she used to be an on-stage go-go dancer for Rob Zombie. She's super nice and has a lot of stories like this, working in a strip club in LA and being paid to pee on a young John Turturro, working as Sasha Mitchell's nanny and talking to police during the domestic charges. I didn't believe most of the stories until we were hanging out one night and Rob Zombie walked in the side door without knocking holding a gift, an old Super Nintendo he found at a garage sale. Back in elementary school, chubby friend told our group that he could do a backflip on his trampoline. Of course no one believed him as he was one of the most unathletic dudes in the school, or so it seemed. We went to his house after school and that MF hit 6 in a row before jumping off the trampoline and spraining his ankle. He went from 0 to 100 to 0 real quick. Friend is a pirate. Like, legit jumped from one boat onto another to start a fight and has piracy on his record. In high school, my husband told me that he slept in a closet under the stairs in his basement. Thought he was just exaggerating until we went over and saw his bedroom, complete with his name on the closet door. That an ex cheated on him, so he slept with the other dude's mom as revenge. Galway in the west of Ireland. One of my friends there was a native of the city. He often told me this story about a local character called Johnny Moochieman, who was stumbling home from the pub late one night and he spotted a circus set up on the side of the road. So he hops over the wall and decides to go in for a look. He wanders over to the cage where the tigers are kept and sticks his hand through the gap wanting to pet them. The tigers immediately bit both of the man's arms off. Well, I didn't believe this story for any number of reasons. His ridiculous name, Johnny Moochieman, the fact that the tigers managed to bite his arms off in one go, the fact that the man had survived, the fact that circuses apparently still exist in this day and age. None of it remotely plausible. Couple of years later, I had just started working in a late-night petrol station, convenience store. Late one night, a drunk comes up to the locked front door trying to get in. I point him around to the hatch I'm serving through. But the security guard unlocks the door and lets him in. He tells me, "This is Johnny. He and the store manager are the only two people you're allowed open the front door for." This seemed odd to me, cause he looked like a random tramp off the street. That's when I realized, the guy's sleeves were dangling. He had no arms. That night, and many other to follow that summer, I had to sell cigarettes to Johnny Moochieman. This involved taking money out of his trouser pocket and replacing the change. It also involved opening the cigarette pack, putting a cigarette in his mouth, lighting a match and then putting the cigarette box and matches in his jacket pocket. Postscript: a few weeks later I met a friend of mine who worked as a barman in the city. We got to talking about Johnny Moochieman. Apparently, he drank a lot in the bar my friend was working in. All day in the bar drinking pints of Guinness through a straw. I was giving out, telling my friend how much I dreaded putting my hand into the Johnny Moochayman's disgusting trousers. My friend snorted, looked at the ground and said, Owenny, what do you think happens when he has to go for a piss? Couple years ago to a bar. My one friend came back from the washroom and nonchalantly mentions that there's an Australian orgy going on in the washroom. I didn't believe him, so I went in to look. There was about 8 guys, all with a thick Australian accent, boning on the bathroom floor. This was in Toronto and not in a gay bar. Edit number 1, they made space so I could use the urinal. Mate came out of his bedroom looking like he had been through the ringer early one morning after we moved into a new place. He told me he had sleepwalked, woke up to a gun in his face at 3 a.m., ran the wrong direction, and ended up almost at Walmart, 2.6 miles according to Google Maps, before a guy came out of his house who called his police officer brother-in-law. The police officer drove his home. Didn't believe he had made it that far, but I drove to Walmart later and saw a house that was the exact description my roommate had given me. Then throughout the day both the cop and the homeowner came to check on him. He has a history with sleepwalking, but not 2 miles. That Bluetooth technology was named after a 10th century king, King Harald Bluetooth Gormson. The king united Denmark and Norway, just like the wireless technology united computers and cell phones. About pretty much everything. Talked about how he modded his PS1 to make Lara Croft naked. He claimed to have ollied 7 stairs on a skateboard while wearing boots when he was a freshman in high school. Bragged about a bunch of girls he made out with that were just absolutely out of his league. We were the awkward Star Wars nerds and he was talking about cheerleaders. This was like the late 90s when our obsession with those movies absolutely not in fashion. He told us he had a working Simpsons arcade cabinet in his garage. Said he had family members in the mafia because he had an Italian last name and was from Jersey. One day he invites us over to his house to hang out for the afternoon. Cranks up the PS1 and I'm like, let's see some Lara Croft titties, sir. He says that's another PlayStation that his cousin was borrowing or something. I figured, fuck it, I can now call him out on some real bullshit he was spouting. Asked him to see the Simpsons arcade cabinet and he took us to the garage, and that motherfucker had a working Simpsons arcade cabinet in his garage. His dad had 40 guitars. This is when I was in high school and everyone was scrounging up money to start a band. Called bullshit, went over to his house after school and holy fuck. And that's how I ended up playing bass in a shitty high school band. The drummer knew every Korn song but not much else. The guitarist knew Hotel California but not much else. And I knew the bass line from the Cake version of I Will Survive. Yeah, this did not last past summer. Always liked to exaggerate. He once told me he just made like $10,000 from a penny stock. I brushed it off as bullshit until the next day he shows up with a used boat. We lived close to a few lakes, so that was a fun summer. That he was recruited to play football at Notre Dame. He was from a very small area, I called BS, and was proven wrong. After looking into it, he held a lot of offers, just didn't have the grades. This is a bit of a long story, and requires some setup. I'm sure that you've all seen those pairs of shoes thrown over telephone wires, right? Usually everyone writes these off as the works of middle school bullies, but one day my friend met up with us with no shoes. He told us that he had just been mugged by 2 guys, but instead of taking anything, they made him take off his shoes, tie the laces together and throw them over a wire, running off after it had been done. He had told questionable stories before, so we all wrote this off as the setup for some sort of prank, but he took us down the street and sure enough, his shoes were up on the wire. Still not convincing, he could have put them there. We give him some crap, someone gives him a pair of manky flip-flops they had in their bag, and we all move on with the day. On our way home, we turn a corner into a side street and see the 2 guys doing the same thing to another dude. They immediately book it and vanish, and we're left standing there with this random guy who's still holding his shoes trying to figure out what just happened. The very first thing that breaks the silence is not some words of reassurance to this poor man, but rather our buddy saying, "I told you I wasn't making this up." A fike, nobody ever found out why, who was behind this, because the police simply don't care about petty shoe tossing. I'm reasonably certain they were just uni students being dumb, but to this day it has a very Twilight Zone feel to it.